رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي. His Excellency Gilbert Benjamin, the Dean of all African embassies in Malaysia, all ambassadors here fully observed with us, and diplomats, representatives from embassies. Who else? Yes, Prof. Hunud, the Dean for Ahmed Ibrahim Kuli of Laws, all parents or parents in place, as we will call them in statu, in loco parentis, and all in the form of students or learning anything, we call them in statu populi. Thank you so much, the organizing committee, for giving me the opportunity to be here. I think actually I'm not supposed to be here, looking at all the qualified personnel who are here. And that topic, by the way, given to me, honestly, I have nothing to say about it. So I'm just going to show that I'm African because of my dress. Actually, this morning when I was just coming, I took out my suit and my wife said, "You're going for African gathering, why don't you take your African dress?" I said, okay, though she's not African, but I believe by heart she's African. Alhamdulillah. So the dress is actually nothing. What is African is the heart. Yes, once the heart is African, and there are some issues actually. Sometimes I go out, I speak Arabic with some people, and some people said, Alhamdulillah, thank God you're not African. I thought you were one of these Negroes. I said, yes, I am. Are you sure? He said, yes. How come you don't speak the language? Then okay, speak the language, I speak with you. Anyway, all I want to say is it's important to be African from the heart. Okay, and the issue of staying in African, I like what Edie said earlier, Brother Edie mentioned something earlier during his speech. It's all about how you control your heart, how you think about home, what you think you can do for the house, for the home, instead of just mentioning African and for all of your years or anything, you have nothing else to think about what to do back home. First and foremost, I would like, if the organizing committee would like to give me the permission, I would like to fine-tune the title a bit. Instead of bringing back talent, I would recommend to making it welcoming back talent. Sometimes you want to go back home. Yeah, I remember once when I finished my PhD, Alhamdulillah, I finished my PhD at the age of 30. Even until today in class, some students think I'm a student. When I sit with them, I went back home and I was, by the way, I forgot to mention, I'm from Ghana. Okay, for those who don't know, I'm from Ghana, from Kumasi. I went back home and I was trying to just show someone about the plans that we may have back home, what we can share. And then someone said, look at this small boy coming from, he said he did his PhD. Where did he do his PhD? Which country? Tell me. Someone said Kuala Lumpur. Yeah, Kuala Lumpur. Look at this small boy. You think you can come back home and teach us something? But then I think inshallah, we still, all these are some of the challenges. There are much more challenges, but I believe inshallah we can offer more to assist inshallah towards the development of our nations and Africa in general. Again, before I go to the topic which I have nothing to say about, I would like to just ask the organizers. I'm not from education. You want me to speak about what? Maybe you should give the topic to someone from education. And they said to me, your next speaker is from education. I said, Alhamdulillah. Then I came again and I asked about him. He has class, he cannot come. And I will be with Prof. Fikri Faris. And mashallah, Prof. Fikri Faris, I think some of the questions he asked me when I was a student here, is your thesis on Africa or not? Actually, mine is not directly, I didn't mention any African name, but I believe the bottom of the thesis by itself is from Africa. I hope you agree with me. Okay, and I hope I've answered all your questions about African history. Alright. So the idea here is what I just want to mention. I'm not directly from education, but the organizing committee mentioned to me, just say something about your achievements, because we would like to learn from your achievements here when you were a student until now that you are a staff as a lecturer. I'm going to just mention some. I don't like mentioning about what I have achieved and this and that, because there are much more people who have achieved better than you. But for what they have said and for the sake of the students who are here, just to share with them what the little that we have been able to do in UIA, at least hopefully, inshallah, the objective is to motivate all of us. Back here, when I arrived, I think, to do my master's, I did my bachelor's in Ghana, University of Science and Technology in Engineering. And I arrived here in Malaysia to do my master's back in just recently, I think in 2007. And I did my master's in business administration, and then PhD, I continued directly with a scholarship from the university in business administration as well. There is a cross carpet from engineering to business. Why? My objective is to widen my scope of knowledge and experience. When you go back home, you can have enough vast areas where you can assist to develop the nation. Now, after I finished doing my PhD, I remember I was the very first African president for all postgraduate students in the university, which was not an easy task for me at that time. We have vast number of students from, I think, if I'm not mistaken, more than 92 countries. And to be the president at that time, it wasn't an easy experience. I really had a tough time. And I remembered working closely with Prof. Fikri Faris, also some of the deputy directors and the rector, on how we can develop. And I remember quite well, there was a time we had this competition, and African universities came here. And I appointed myself personally just to go and assist them, and I was able to bring them here to meet the director. Because I was very proud that, alhamdulillah, we have some African universities, I think from South Africa, also from Ghana, and from Nigeria, to come here. The objective was help African universities, how we can have MOUs to collaborate so we can assist towards the education back home. And these are some simple efforts that during my time we have tried to do, and I believe all the students seated here today, I will start from the president of ASEM, I believe inshallah we can do better. We can come together in our own little efforts that we can to assist towards the development of our nations back home. A lot of the time people ask, and this is a normal question that the locals will ask you, when you finish your studies, what will you do? I will also throw the same question to all of us here, especially the students who are here. Whatever you are studying, when you finish and you complete your studies, what will you do? Okay? This is something that to ponder on. You'll be surprised to know there are some who think when I finish, I just want to have a job back home. There are so many problems, there are wars, there are this and that. Fine, like Prof. Fikri mentions, if you don't want to be African again, it's okay, it's enough. It's up to you. But trust me, home is where the heart is, as the East say. Okay, home is where the heart is, and once you are here, there is no place like home. Trust me, there is no place like home. It's good to say, to mention that you are here, you want to have some experience, so when you go back home, you can share your experience. Though you may not also be able to solve all the problems of the world, but at least at your level, there is something we can do. Now let me come back to the second aspect of the topic I have nothing to say about. I'll just share with you a simple joke about our own education system. There was these two professors, okay, by the way, any Profonode and all our African professors here, I don't mean you, okay? Someone else. That's a joke. There was these two professors of engineering and aerospace. Now what happened? They sat in a plane. Okay, they sat in a plane, and while sitting, fastening the seat belt and preparing, suddenly one student came in. One guy, very nice looking, handsome young man like me. He entered, and then he asked, "Sir, how are you? Prof, it's a long time." He said, "What are you doing here?" He said, "No, we made this plane, so we are trying to see how it will work." one of the professors just ran out. He just ran out of the plane. And then the other professor was seated. So someone asked the other professor, why your friend ran out and you are sitting down? He said he ran out because he's scared. Okay, what about you? He said, don't worry, I know this engine will not start. If our students are those who made this plane, don't worry, the engine will not even start. So it's okay. Now this is just a joke to share with you how the mentality of our own people on our educational system. Now if you make a plane or you teach a student, like someone mentions, that if you teach a medical student, okay, in your own community and you become a medical doctor, and then when you get sick, you find a plane ticket to go abroad, it means you have not done the right thing. Do you agree with me? Yes, because you thought he is a medical doctor. Now you are sick, why do you have to go abroad? But unfortunately, this is what's happening in Africa. You agree? Exactly what's happening in Africa. We have our own talents. And trust me, if, for example, you might have taken the air ticket to go abroad just for medical checkup, you might need a medical student there to take care of you who is an African. Who is an African, who is abroad, maybe for his medical master's or PhD or anything, but you have taken the ticket to go there. Now why don't we think of having the same brains back home? It's not about bringing the talent, it's about welcoming the talent. We have talents back home, alhamdulillah, but those coming also, when they come, we welcome them. And if I believe from my own experience, I mean, the committee mentioned to me, say something from your heart. And that's what I'm just sharing. I believe if we are able, back home, to make the situation so conducive, trust me, most of the talents will go back home. And since we have the dean of all the embassies, my own ambassador is not here, but I believe he's been represented well, inshallah, by His Excellency Benjamin. And I believe this information might get to them, or get all of them. What we require, what I would recommend, for my little humble suggestion, is that find a particular platform back home in such a way that when talents come back, they will be welcomed. If they come back and they are not welcomed, trust me, they will go back. Especially when there are very better, greener pastures abroad, and they come home and they are not welcomed, they will just go back. Having said that, does not mean all of us seated here, especially the students, including myself, I still consider myself a student, doesn't mean because we have said that and back home there are challenges, when you finish you just look for ways and means just to stay around. You can stay around forever, but forever no one will ever know you. And the more you stay back, I mean the more you stay outside, the more you get to be forgotten inside. The more you stay outside, the more you get to be forgotten, to the point that your own kampung, your own village, your own village back home will ever forget about you. When you come back home, no one knows you. And not about knowing you because of your impact. Even here, you can make an impact. And let alone when you go back home. So stay here, that's good, get experience, alright? And I'm advising myself and advising all my colleagues here, you can stay here, do whatever you have here to do, but the objective should be back home. Something that you think when you finish, one day you'll go back home and become the president of your country. And I kept saying this. I remember we had a program, and I think all COPs, we call them Council of Principals. And again, alhamdulillah, I have to just share this also with my fellows, my fellow African students here. For the first time also in the university, I was also appointed as the first principal of a mahalla. I was also, like what we say back home, the hall or the hostel. The very first principal of a mahalla who is an international, and not only international, but who is also African. Alhamdulillah, and I believe this is a great achievement, not for myself, but for all other African students coming up. We can do better if we are able to do this. One of these, our COPS meeting, I remember they asked me to be the moderator, because I don't know whether I'm just lucky or not lucky. Throughout my life, from primary school until now, everywhere I am, I will be the youngest person. I was the youngest student when I was in primary, youngest in the class for junior high, youngest in senior high, youngest in my degree, youngest in my master's, and youngest in my PhD, and also youngest now in the staff in the university, and also youngest in the principals, also youngest here. I don't know whether it is it's a plus or a minus, but I'll just make it neutral. All I want to say is, inshallah, the other students coming behind, we can do better. Now they asked me to moderate. I moderated, and one of the things I mentioned, I don't know how I mentioned, but I just mentioned to them, they were mentioning so much, many things about Malaysian students and how Malaysian students become this and that. So I felt, what about us? It should represent all of us. And I said, well, one day I can also become the president of my country, and I want to develop my nation as well. And then they were so proud, and they clapped. I don't want to become Malaysian. Not because Malaysia is not good. Malaysia is very, very doing well, which something we have to learn. We are just to learn, like the Nigerian ambassador mentions about China, doesn't mean you just go and chase Chinese passport to become Chinese. Or go and chase American passport to become American, or chase Malaysian passport to become Malaysian. Whatever it is, do whatever you want to be, or become whatever you want to become, but your heart should be linked back home. And that's what I believe in. Your heart should be linked back home. You go back, change the system, change the perception of people, and try to impact the mentality. We can do better. We have the talent, and back home, our dean, I would recommend we put in platforms in such a way that when the talents come back home, we welcome them. Make the opportunity in such a way that when we come back home, we are welcomed. And once you are welcomed, you should come well in what you have. Okay? There are so many things people say about Africa. It's like almost all good news about Africa are bad news, and all bad news about Africa are good news. All good news, I will repeat this, all good news about Africa are bad news, or is a bad news to the West and to other people, and all bad news about Africa is a good news. That's what you see on the papers. If an African achieves something in Asia or in any part of the world, the achievement is never mentioned. But when an African or someone who looks like an African does something which is considered or alleged to be wrong, is what you see on the top, on the heading of the newspaper. Now this is why does this happen? It doesn't happen because we don't have people who can talk. It happens because ourselves, we don't support each other. And ourselves, when people mention, we agree. You have to stand up. Doesn't mean you have to just go and fight people and do this and that. No. To be outstanding, you have to stand out. And what I mean by that is, if you are here as a student, in your class, be number one. Okay? If whatever you are doing in engineering, be number one. Of course, number one in only positives, not only also negatives. Okay? Everything we do, we have to be number one in everything. Stand out. If you are not number, or someone, let me just share this. There's someone from some